Hello and welcome to another episode of Tubb Talk, the podcast for managed service providers, where we bring you insights and actionable advice from leading experts to help you manage and grow your business with confidence. I'm Karina Barrett from Tubblog, from the Tubblog team, joining you from the beautiful Cape Town in South Africa. Normally, you're hearing the voice of the founder of Tubblog, the hub of MSPs, Richard Tubb, but I'm stepping in to host today because we're tackling a topic that's quite close to my heart. Today, I'm diving into the world of credit management with a special guest, Nicki Kinton from Confident Cashflow. Nicki will be sharing her expertise on how MSPs can tackle late payment woes and keep cash flow in check. Nicki, welcome to Tubb Talk.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Glad. Before we dive in, help us understand a bit about the company and which part of the world you operate and how many people are in your team.
Okay, so I'm based in Wiltshire, and I have one team member who is based in Kent. So the advent of remote working is really working for us actually, but we have clients all over the UK. So we tend to just stay within the UK.
Amazing. What type of clients do you typically work with and what do you do for them?
So our clients can range it from anything from a solopreneur right through to businesses turning over £2 million. But really, the majority of our clients in our sweet spot tends to be those with employees that are between 4 and 30 members of the team. Usually at that point, they've started to have some ambitious growth plans, things like that. They're also generating enough invoices for things to start to get a bit tricky and that they're not necessarily being able to manage it themselves. And the things that we sort of help with is helping them to establish the right processes, which gives them the foundations to grow their business safely so that they know that the money is going to keep flowing in. We help by supporting with drafting or reviewing and updating the terms and conditions for the businesses. And we also offer an outsourced credit control function. So if they don't have anybody in the business that wants, that can chase the payment, we can do it for them.
Amazing. Could you explain a little bit about what a credit policy, a credit management, and credit control are? What do these terms mean to MSPs?
I think it's the same the world over. Unless you're in it, you don't always know what they are. And it's so your credit policy is essentially your blueprint, your map, if you like, of how you're going to manage granting credit. So a lot of people go into business assuming that we've got to offer credit to enable us to make sales. So as soon as you give somebody time to pay, you're offering credit. So your credit policy is the blueprint for how you will do that. So it talks about what you will offer, how you will offer it, who you'll offer it to, what happens to make sure that it's done safely. So you're not putting your business at risk. And then it'll have some more information about what the exceptions might be and what happens if things go wrong. The credit management bit is the actual activity that happens to manage that process. So it's things like your onboarding process, if you do risk assessments or anything like that, whether you're doing any monitoring using credit reports and things like that, whether you use credit insurance and managing that relationship. And then the credit control bit is the bit at the end, really. It's the chasing for payment. Sometimes referred to as collections. But the credit control piece is the bit that happens at the end. Credit management is throughout, and it all starts with the credit policy.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining those. Many of the MSPs struggle with late payments. Can you explain why you believe late payments is merely a symptom and not the root cause of cash flow issues?
Absolutely. So late payments happen for lots of different reasons. And most of those reasons, not all, but most of those reasons are actually within the business's control rather than their client's control. So a lot of it will be, it's usually, late payment is usually an indication that something hasn't happened earlier on in that, what we call the order to cash process. So something that didn't happen from receiving the client's inquiry right through to that expectation of getting paid. That could be not asking the right questions at the beginning. That could be not actually doing due diligence on the client and understanding whether they are able to pay you. So it could well be that there's been a breakdown in process somewhere, so there's a sign-off piece not happened. That it could be that the invoicing was delayed. There's all sorts of reasons why. And so we have to look internally at the things we can control first before we then start sort of saying, well, it's all the client's fault.
Understandably. So many businesses, like particularly the small ones, tend to sideline having a credit policy. Why do you believe it's crucial to implement these best practices regardless of the company size?
Well, I think the credit policies and the credit management practices are all proportionate. So obviously, as a business grows, that what's expected can grow with it. But even the smallest of business, it's useful to have that credit policy, even if it's just a brief skeleton outline, then with some checklists to support that in terms of the processes, because it just helps you to stay consistent. It takes the emotion out of it. I mean, particularly for the smallest businesses, it's often the business owner that's having to manage all of this, and they're quite emotionally invested in the outcome, and it's their money. So by having a process, you can actually then say, well, it's not me, it's the policy, it's our policy, and that takes some of that awkwardness out of it for some of those conversations as well. But it does enable you to be consistent. So if something goes wrong, instead of that panic mode where you deer in the headlights and you don't do something about it for 2 weeks, you go to your policy and say, what should I be doing next? And the policy then tells you this is the next step.
Yeah, I guess it adds a little bit of structure as well, which makes you not get overwhelmed by the moment as well.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And I know there are many misconceptions about credit, especially among smaller businesses. Can you discuss some of the misconceptions and why it's important to have a robust credit policy regardless of the business size?
So I think one of the first misconceptions I come across is we don't offer credit. So if somebody will say, well, our invoices are due on presentation, but actually if you've already delivered the services, unless you're invoicing in advance, if you've already delivered the services, you've given them credit to some extent because you've done the work and not been paid for it yet.
That's okay.
But also other misconceptions are that things like, well, I have to offer it. You don't. You absolutely don't. But credit is a tool to try and help improve and increase sales. And it's a trade-off between more sales and more risk. So, but there are also other things. So there's this idea, they've signed the contract. That means that they'll pay on time. That's fine. They know what they're doing. They're a big firm, so they're good for it. So not always the case. Actually, they can be often the hardest ones. And there's that late payments are an inevitable part of doing business. I've just got to suck it up. So those are some of the misconceptions that we see. And again, the credit policy helps to, I suppose, manage those expectations a little bit better.
I see. Okay, if you're listening and you want to find out more about confident cash flow and Nicki, then you can check out the resource page we've put together accompanying this episode at tubblog.co.uk. Back to you, Nicki. I'm intrigued. The confident cash flow uses the 5-pillar framework. Can you explain a little bit about how this approach helps businesses stay on top of their credit management?
Yeah, so the 5 pillars framework just really categorizes the sort of credit management activity into these 5 key areas, really, I suppose. And they make sure that that activity is consistent. So the first activity is prevention. So what are the things that you are doing to try and prevent late payments from happening in the first place? So that would be things like your terms and conditions, your contracts, any due diligence you do on customers to assess creditworthiness, that sort of thing. What other activity are you doing to prevent it? So what information are you collecting from the customer right from the outset? There's a few times when you don't. I've seen people who have only got a very small amount of it, a name and an email address, and maybe a mobile phone number, and that's it. There's a lot more that you need to help you make sure that things run smoothly. And the operations side is then the things, the day-to-day activity. So things like your invoicing, your credit control. Are you using diary management system to track the credit control, the chasing activity? Are you using things like automated reminders to supplement your credit control activity? What does that activity look like? Are you using phone calls? Are you using, I don't know, WhatsApp or SMS messages, anything like that? What does that activity look like? Then the detection side is all about spotting issues before they become a real problem. Because although I say that late payments are a symptom that something's gone, something else is going on, things still change and go wrong for our clients, for us, for that sort of thing. So the detection piece helps you to understand changes that are happening for your clients. So are there any warning signs? What are you looking out for? What are those signs that you need to be aware of that show that they might be getting into financial difficulty? So are their payments getting a bit longer? Are they asking for payment plans? Are they trying to reduce how much they spend with you and things like that? Or conversely, are they actually trying to spend more with you because they've been cut off by another supplier? That sort of thing. So and it's having those tools in place to detect some of that things. Those things might be monitoring from a credit reference agency. You can also get monitoring through credit insurance, but there's also your own observations. And if you've got BDMs out in the field talking to clients or client managers, then what information are they picking up, and that sort of thing. But also looking at your query rates. What's going on with queries? Are you getting many queries back in? Are there any common themes that you need to be then addressing to prevent? Because queries are one of the biggest reasons that invoices don't get paid. So all these things, what are you doing to detect any problems before they become a big issue to your and a big impact on your cash flow? Then the integration piece is all about the fact that it's not just one person's job. The whole business has to be invested in protecting the company's cash flow. And often I've seen, that one person in a chain of sort of responsibilities hasn't done something, and that then has a knock-on effect, and then we can't get paid. So it's actually making sure everybody's aware of what their role is and how it impacts on their ultimate ability to get paid. And that might be having regular conversations between sales and the person or people responsible for chasing for invoices, that sort of thing. Regular meetings to make sure that everybody's on the same page, as it were. And then the review piece is all about the fact that nothing stands still. Actually, in the tech world, you all know that, it's evolving at such a rapid rate. But actually, processes and the market changes and your business model changes. So that means your processes need to change. So there needs to be a regular piece about review and update and making sure that actually what you're doing now is serving you and is serving your clients adequately so that you'll still get paid on time.
Amazing. Thank you. That's such a comprehensive framework and so easy to follow as well. I know that you're offering a free webinar that's titled How to Get Paid on Time on the 26th of February at 3:30 p.m. GMT. For anyone listening to this in the future, after the webinar has taken place, can they watch a recording?
So the webinar will be available to those that sign up, that register to it afterwards. So if you're registered, if for some reason you can't make it, then you will get to see the recording. But I will be running subsequent ones, so it'd be worth linking up with me so that you can see if another date suits you better.
Fantastic. And what can the attendees expect to take away from this webinar?
So obviously there's only so much you can achieve in an hour, but we will be looking at things like how your mindset can affect the way that you get paid, and then looking at what sort of processes you can put in place. They doesn't have to be big and complicated. It could just be a series of small changes that can make a really big difference. So it's the sort of things that that will have the least effort, biggest impact. That's the thing. And then also we'll look at communication, so the when and how, and also how to be confident about it, because that can be a big barrier to effective credit control.
Absolutely. You say that the webinar covers mindset matters as a key takeaway. Can you elaborate on how business owners' mindset towards payment terms can influence cash flow?
Yes, so we all have feelings about money, often from the way that we are brought up, particularly in the UK. I think we've been brought up to believe that it's very private, and actually to talk about money is a little bit crass or rude. And that we've learned that through our childhoods, and although that's a personal mindset, a personal belief, it will leak out into our business, particularly if we're the ones having to do the chasing and that sort of thing. So we then feel uncomfortable talking about money, and we often fail to give the credit control side of things, those conversations, the time and space that they deserve, because we're frightened of confrontation, or we're fearful of upsetting a big client. So we hold ourselves back from having the conversations that we really should do.
Thank you. You emphasize also having processes that work in place. Can you share some initial steps businesses can implement to avoid frequent late payments?
So the very first thing is be very clear on your terms. So, and have that conversation very early. Don't just present the term, your contract terms as a fait accompli and expect it to come back. What will happen is somebody will sign it. So, the person in the business responsible for their IT and sign it, but they might not be the person paying the bills, and they won't care actually if their company has different terms to what you're asking for. They just want to get that service into their business. And it won't be then until you come to getting paid, and account payable says, oh, computer says no. So have those conversations early. Make sure you understand if you need a PO. Make sure you understand what the process is for your invoice to be approved and get on the payment run. A very good question I always suggest people start off with is, our terms are 14 days from date of invoice. Is there anything that will prevent that from being possible? And then in doing that, you're giving them an opportunity to say to you, actually, we pay all our suppliers at the end of the month, so we wouldn't be able to meet the 14 days. So then you've got the opportunity to have a conversation and start negotiating. So that's one of the big things for me, is get those T's and C's and those conversations started really early, and make sure you have all those details for like accounts payable and those are the people that you'll need in order to chase the invoices. I think that's one big area where people fall down a lot.
Yeah, I think that, and that ties in so well with my next question of confident communication is vital in setting expectations. Like, what strategies would you recommend for business owners to follow up on businesses without feeling too pushy?
So the first thing to remember, it's going back to the mindset, is to remember it's your money. You've earned it. They've agreed to pay for it. So this is not anything other than a transaction. So it's not like it's not like asking for the sale, actually, because asking for the sale is you're asking for something that's not happened. But this is something that's been agreed and is expected by everybody. So there should be no surprises here. So if you are delivering consistently good service and there are no issues, there's been no queries, there is no reason why that other person is not expecting you to ask for payment. So, and approach the conversation from a place of wanting to understand, not accuse. So it's not, why haven't you paid us? It's, what can you help me understand what's preventing you making payment, and leading on to finding the solution. Yes, you absolutely know the solution you want is I want paying, but to go in with a I want paying and I want paying now is never going to help the situation. So you have to lead the conversation in a way that it feels collaborative and that it feels like you're trying to find a solution together.
Amazing. I'm actively looking to grow the credit control support side of my business. What steps would you recommend for businesses wanting to enhance their credit management processes?
So that's a huge question. It really is a huge question. And without knowing where you're currently at, it's a really difficult one to answer. And if you don't have somebody responsible for this sort of stuff on a day-to-day basis, then that's my first port of call, is to see if you've got anybody with the right skill sets, because doing credit control is a different skill set to asking for sales and things like that. It is a different skill set. You might think, oh, but they're both on the phone, they're both talking to people, but it is different. It is very different. And there's a lot of in as with all things in business, we all go into business to do the thing that we love to do. So whether you're an IT geek, a credit management geek, or whether you're a fabulous designer, whatever it is you're going to do, that's your thing. And you don't know what you don't know. So I would always advocate getting an expert in to help, even just to guide you to start off with, about what the fundamentals to get in place. But the fundamentals really are making sure you have that credit policy, even if it's just, as I say, a simple sort of, we want to work with these type of people, we're prepared to offer this type of credit terms, provided they meet these criteria, and this is how we will handle credit control, even if it's just that really simple thing. And then make sure that whoever's responsible for doing the credit control has the time in their diary to do it. Very often it's, if the business isn't big enough, it forms part of somebody else's responsibilities. It's one task on the list. And because it's often the least favourite, it gets pushed to the bottom of the pile every time. So and other things so you need to learn how to prioritise your credit control activity. So I had a situation with a client where their credit control lady would start at A and run out of month when she got to N. So if you were in the sort of, back half of the alphabet, you rarely got chased. So you need to have a method for prioritising who you chase and when you chase them as well.
That's a good tip. Thank you. And then for businesses looking to make a change on how they manage their credit policies, what are some initial steps they can take today?
Well, so we go back to the making sure you have all the information from the outset. That's really, really good. But think about what you're offering and who you're offering it to. Why are you offering credit? So are you offering it to everybody because that's what your competitors do? Why are you offering the length of terms that you're offering? Is that because that's what the market does? Or is that because what you think it's what you should do? But is it really what your business needs? You need to look at things like, what are you paying suppliers? And compare that to what you're offering to your clients, and make sure that they're not misaligned. You also need to be thinking about, what is the outcome you're actually looking for? What are you trying to achieve with this credit policy? Are you trying to achieve getting people paying you more quickly? Are you trying to achieve gaining more clients? Is that what it is? Making more sales? Is that what your credit policy is focused on, or is it focused on actually really reducing risk and being quite risk averse? So you need to understand what your risk appetite is as well. So there's a lot to it. And again, I'll go back to, if you're not sure, talk to an expert.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Listening to you I could listen to you for hours. But I wanted to find out who influences you. Are there any mentors or authors or speakers that have made a big impact on your life?
So I'm gonna start with a very twee one. I'm going to start with my dad. My dad was a chartered accountant with his own practice, and I used to work with him in his practice moons ago in my sort of school and university holidays, and he was the one that sort of, I suppose, set my work ethic, set my the way that I wanted to deal with people, and also my love of numbers and all of that sort of thing. So sadly, he passed just as I was starting up the business, so he didn't get to see it succeed, but I'm sure he's looking down on me somewhere with all of this. Some other really good books, though. I love the book Surrounded by Idiots by a chap called Thomas Erickson, which really helps with communication. I think once you start to understand your client and the person you're talking to and how they prefer to communicate, you'll get much better results. Numbers folks, I suspect, very much like IT folks, are of a very, if you know anything about disc profiling, are probably very blue or very green. If you know anything about disc profiling, which means that actually we're quite considered. We're based on logic. We like detail, all of that sort of stuff. Your clients might not want the detail. They just might want a very quick message, a quick little bit of information, a quick something. They don't want to go into the detail to the nth degree. And then when you're having those conversations, if you keep going on, you're just going to wind them up. So actually understanding who you're talking to, their preferred communication style, and trying to adapt yours is a really interesting thing for getting and for changing the results that you might want to get. So I really recommend that book, Surrounded by Idiots. Is absolutely brilliant. And anything to do with the disc profiling is really, really good. Other books that I've really enjoyed are things like there's a book called How to Be Brilliant, or The Art of Being Brilliant by Dr. Andy Cope. Again, that's just about maintaining mindset and positivity, which I think is really important. It's about not letting things get you down and controlling what you can control, not worrying about what others do. So in those situations where you might have somebody who's getting a bit upset on the phone, because it's very natural for us, if we're embarrassed that we've not done something and we've not paid, for instance, we cover that by getting defensive and upset. And it's embarrassment that's causing that. So learning how to not take that personally and just see that as their reaction, not yours, is really important. So I like that Art of Being Brilliant. That is really good as well. So yeah, there's I mean, I'm a big reader, so there's quite a lot I've got on my shelf.
I can imagine. It's so interesting, even though we're talking about numbers and credit policies and credit management, you always come back to, it's always about mindset and communication, and that being pretty much the most important thing to get set before even talking about numbers. So I find that so interesting that anyone can just pick up these books that you've mentioned, and as long as you've got the mindset and you're kind of getting you're able to communicate with people better, you can slowly start progressing and understanding your credit policies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of what holds us back is ourselves. Most of what gets in our way is ourselves. So anything we can do to sort of free that up will help you move forward, whether it's with your finances or whether that's with, growing the business, your sales, whatever. It's so important.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nicki, for joining us today and sharing your insights on managing cash flow and credit efficiency and mindset. If anyone wants to continue the conversation with you or find out more about confident cash flow, where can they find you online?
So, well, there's the website. Confidentcashflow.com, absolutely. And I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect. I hang out there a lot, to be fair. So if you send me a message in LinkedIn, I will grab that pretty quickly. Or you can email me, Nicki@confidentcashflow.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much.